Welcome back to GrazeLand. Today we're building a chicken run. First, you gotta take out the measurements. Next, we work on an auger. Fun fact, I broke my hand a year or two ago with this very same auger. So I welded up a contraption to mount it to the riding mower because this area is really rocky. And so that way, if it catches a rock, instead of it breaking my hand, it would just slam into the riding mower, and the mower doesn't go anywhere if it gets hit, obviously. So far, this works like a champ. I have no more broken hands. And the cost of this, to buy it on Amazon, I'll put a link if you want it, was basically the same price of renting it for one day. And I used this for a previous project of building a fence, which I'll show you a video of that later. And I'm using it for this and a few other projects. So even though it's slowly dying, it came with a second pull string because they knew the pull strings were going to wear out. I'm already on the second pull string, but nonetheless, I used it for way more than one day. So it's unfortunate it's not very environmentally friendly to buy a throwaway auger instead of just renting a good quality one, but the price is what it is. Most of it's metal though, so it can go to the metal scrapyard when I'm done. One nice thing about working on chicken coops and chicken runs, you just ballpark it and nothing has to be exact. At least for me. I don't have to worry about building codes. I'm outside of the city limits. I got these anchors on Amazon, and originally I got them for the fence project, but I learned really fast they're very weak in a straight line. They have to have multiple angles of direction for them to get their rigidity. So now I'm using them for this, and I only have like 50 others left over. Also, I got that automated chicken door. That thing automatically opens shortly after sunrise, and it automatically closes shortly after sunset. The new chicks, usually there's 3 to 4 chicks that are still learning to come back into the coop before it shuts, and I have to go rescue them. But now while we're waiting for the concrete to dry, here's a sneak peek of how ugly this chicken coop used to be. And also I got it up on the railroad ties by myself, and there's a video for that if you're interested in it. I put all new siding on it, replaced the windows. Now it's been a week, I think. So they got to dry pretty good, and now leveling, I have a post level so you can see both directions of the post and getting them pretty darn close. So now in a second you're going to see I'm hanging the main support post, and I'm doing it by myself, and it's heavy and I'm on a ladder and it's awkward. So I just put a scrap piece of board there and I rest it on the board, and then I get a couple clamps and clamp it into place so it doesn't go anywhere, and keep it there long enough to put in a couple screws, and then I can remove the support. Easy way to do it if you're doing this by yourself. With the chicken run, I try to get as much of the stuff from the trash pile from rehabbing the house as possible. So a lot of the 2x4s end up getting recycled. The 4x4 posts, they are pressure treated, and those are new. And also the roofing you see on the ground, that's new as well. I didn't have any of that laying around, so I had to buy it new. I didn't want to use shingles, even though I do have some old shingles laying around. I didn't want chemicals and asphalt leaking that into the soil. Anytime you ever replace a roof, I always recommend metal, because then you can harvest the rainwater as well. So all the exterior main supports are all one piece. The inside supports though gets a little bit sketchy. There's a few boards that weren't long enough, so I literally just bolted them together on the inside. And I used little metal brackets on the left here to anchor them to the 2x6, but I just anchored them to the right 2x6 with screws, 4-inch screws. So you can tell me if you think this is going to collapse in the snow. We already had a really strong wind, and they did survive the wind. Our neighbor's greenhouse and windmill got destroyed, but this stood its ground. So that's exciting, not for them, but for us. And then the wind usually comes from like the northwest here. So the final sheet that I put on is a sheet that hits the wind first. So I try to put it in layers, just like with rain. I try to put it in the direction the wind would go. so it's harder for the wind to catch underneath one of the panels. And you can see, like, this is a perfect example where I have two 2x4s and I just screwed them together in a few spots. So I'm probably going to need to put something there to reinforce those later when the snow comes, but one problem at a time. So the bottom part gets a lot of screws, and then the side that faces the wind gets a lot of screws as well. I'm talking about the metal flashing here. And it was even windy the day I installed these. That's why I have random 4x4 scraps on the ceiling to help keep them from flying away before I get a chance to really bolt them down. And you're welcome to correct me if I'm saying this wrong, but I think they're called pergolas, those crosshatch 4x8s. Originally I had those for an arbor I was going to build for a garden in my last house, but I moved before I could build it, and I didn't want to leave the wood for the next owner, so I took it with me. And I'm going to put that on the side facing the road to try to give the chickens a little bit of privacy, just so they're less stressed with the vehicles driving by. At least that's my theory, so we'll see how that works out for them. Eventually I'd like to build a privacy fence on that whole side though. You can see what I mean now with that last panel. I really gave it a lot of screws. These are also some sort of roofing screws that have rubber washers built into them so they don't leak water. But I just put a lot of screws in that last panel to really ensure that the wind doesn't get underneath it. Now with the trellises, I do put chicken wire up before I put those up, just because small critters, and when the chickens are tiny, can fit through those holes. So chicken wire first, and then the lattice goes next. If I had enough of them, I'd put one on all sides, but there's just barely enough to do one side and the small opening between the roof of the run and the roof of the chicken coop. You'll see one mistake I did here is I figured I'd make the post based off of the length of the fence, but what I should have done is just made the post dead center. You can see it's more leaning to the right. So to get the chicken wire between those posts, I really had to stretch the wire, but then on the other side the wire was essentially not stretched at all. So if it was centered, they'd both have even tension. So learn from that mistake. The gate was also a piece of trash that the previous owner just left behind, but as they say, one man's trash is another man's treasure. So all I had to do is buy some anchor bolts for it for a couple bucks, and I repurposed it as the gate / door for the chicken run. Works awesome. What you see going on here, the base of the chicken coop is basically just sitting on 2 pallets, and so there's openings in the pallets where chicks can get out because they're tiny. And so there's a few spots where I filled in the holes with chicken wire, and there's other spots where I filled in the holes with some 2x4s, and I'll paint those later. Also, that door right there gets ripped out and I replace it with a different door. I don't believe I filmed it, but I will show you a tour of the inside later on, and that will have the new door installed as well. I didn't put chicken wire on the gate, so it just has a chain link fence still on it. Eventually I probably will, but for now I just had a leftover scrap of wood that I put on the track, kind of like a sliding door, and just used some old 2x4s as the guides. And so that keeps them from being able to escape, and it's kind of like a double door in case one door opens up. And here's the little guys getting so much bigger and also enjoying hanging out in the chicken run. Who would have ever thought chickens actually love mealworms way more than they love red wigglers? In fact, I don't even think they love red wigglers. They just tolerate them.